amusing as that video was, what's not funny is that the drugging of combat soldiers is now practically official policy. That's because the US is now fighting 2 wars, and US soldiers are stressed out by the strain of repeated deployment. So the Pentagon turned once again to its secret weapon, the little yellow pill. Generals were delighted that the use of amphetamines could send tired soldiers back into the battle. But it wasn't without consequences. In 2002, US jets bombed a Canadian patrol in Afghanistan, killing 4 Canadian soldiers in what's become known as the Tarnak Farm incident. Since the dead were Canadians, there was an official inquiry, and the pilots pleaded that despite flying 40-hour missions, their requests for rest had been denied, and that instead they were given what were called go pills, a pure amphetamine called dexedrine, and told that they would be discharged if they refused to take the pills. It was these drugs, the pilot said, that impaired their judgment. Take a look at the amount of times US forces have accidentally bombed Afghan civilians, and it makes you wonder how many more Air Force pilots are out there flying their machines with impaired judgment and 1,000 kg bombs. But the Pentagon does have a solution. And no, it's not stopping the use of these pills, but rather starting the use of no-go pills. Sedatives which put the pilots to sleep after the go pills have rendered them sleepless.
Drug creatures who are constantly pumped to make alert, and if they get too exhausted, they're given Ambien to sleep. So it is having a psychological toll on the soldiers, and the long-term effects we don't know.
Well, amphetamines and sedatives aren't the only drugs being dished out to soldiers. 1 in 6 US soldiers in Afghanistan is also on antidepressants like Prozac. Do they work? Well, in 2006 and 2007, nearly half of US Army suicides were soldiers who were already on antidepressants. And this year alone, Army suicides in January have outstripped US combat deaths. But rather than swear off the entire project, Pentagon scientists are working overtime on newer and better drugs, such as a pill and a nasal spray that can allow soldiers to go without sleep entirely. And that's, of course, in addition to their latest wonder drug, Provigil, which has also made its way to the civilian market. But as we've seen with nuclear weapons and with drones, you can invent the technology, but that doesn't mean you own it. And if the US decides to augment its technological edge with a chemical one, then won't the rest of the world simply follow suit? Well, I put that question to scientist and bioethicist Dr. Jonathan Moreno.
I think that's true. I think that every new armament has spurned an arms race, or a concern about or interest in an arms race. That's right. And one of the unintended consequences of the introduction of new pharmacology, we haven't even talked yet about new devices, biosensors, for example, that can measure fatigue or stress in a soldier's helmet or in their vehicle and maybe moderate their stress through some kind of magnetic stimulation. Anything that you introduce is going to increase interest in other actors who may not have the same ability to test these things or interest in managing them. And obviously, in the modern era of terrorism, when you don't need to have necessarily a big demonstration of capacity, but only one that is sort of unpredictable, it does create the problem that, yes, you'll have unintended consequences. Non-actors, non-state actors will pick up on these things, and they'll show their ability to use them, at least in some small way. So, yes, that is a problem. And the diffusion of scientific knowledge, of course, also creates these kinds of problems.
That was Dr. Moreno. And it's possible that the future we're looking at is one in which every soldier won't just have his arms and ammunition and his military rations, but also a little walking pharmacy perhaps attached to his belt. Well, that brings us to the end of the show for this week. These were the drug wars, past, present, and with an eye to the future. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm Zarrar Khuhro, and this was Counterspin.